Okay, so today is June 13th, 2023, and we'll talk about two architects. We'll start with Emilio Ambasz. I'm not sure I pronounce well his family name. If I don't, I apologize. Someone said that, maybe even himself, that in a way, all his work can be described through these three words: green over gray. And I love these three words just in this succession, just like this: green over gray. I think we overvaluate, we are too fond of grayness, and if green goes over gray or grayness, all for the better, in my opinion. But in my opinion, even redness, if it goes over gray, is just fine, or blueness, or yellow, or whatever color. Please, let's not make life gray, because life can be gray indeed. But let's make it great, not gray. They almost sound the same way, but you know the difference. Let's make life great, not gray. Emilio Ambasz, born June 13th, and that's the reason we talk about him today. Born in Residencia in Argentina, is an Argentinian US architect and award-winning industrial designer. From 1969 to 1976, so for 7 years, he was curator of design at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Ambasz was a precursor of green architecture. Anyway, this is an opportunistic evaluation. I took the text from Wikipedia. Maybe Emilio Ambasz has nothing to do with it. His trademark style is a combination of buildings and gardens, which he describes as green over gray. But if I am allowed to say something here, what about a time when our work is a combination of gardens and buildings? That is, if we start with gardens and then we try to make buildings to match the gardens, and not the other way around. He bucked the trends of the 1970s, hiding his buildings under grass or putting them on boats. The Emilio Ambasz Award for Green Architecture is awarded every year by the Architecture Israel Quarterly magazine. This is the man. Look, he looks a little bit, like I don't know how to call him. I'm not very fond of this picture by him, but that's the one which maybe says something about him more than some other pictures. Some drawings of Emilio Ambasz, very poetical drawings, as you can see. He had many exhibitions with his drawings, and I remember once I showed at the university here in Bucharest entries, a project sent to a competition. I launched the House of Oxymorons, and I saw 3 students studying a project for a house for Sisyphus, and I was happy that they were studying it, because this was not a very common phenomenon. I went to them and I said to them, this project was made by a professor at the School of Architecture in Seoul, in South Korea. And one student said to me, "A professor?" And I said, "Yes, a professor." He said, "How come it doesn't have, in Romanian, cote, dimensions?" And, I was very surprised because, I mean, look here, do you see any dimension? No. And I can show countless drawings by famous architects which do not have, because it's a difference between a working drawing, the one that you submit in order for the building to be constructed, and the drawing which is maybe in part rendering or some kind of a conceptual drawing. And, you know, at that stage, it has to do with an idea, with the immeasurable, as Louis Kahn called it, or would have called it. So I think it's a good thing to also try to do this kind of drawings, like the ones you see here. Unfortunately, they are small, but we'll see other drawings by him, which express the essence of an idea that you have for a certain project. And you can do it poetically, just as he did here. It doesn't have to be, you know, it's not a working drawing. It's an imaginative drawing, a poetical drawing, but it has its role in architecture. It might even be more important for you know, the soul of architecture than you know, a very rigorous and correct working drawing. Look at these drawings. I think they have plastic qualities, and they show the artistic side of Emilio Ambasz. And they express very clearly what he wanted to do for a particular project. This house he actually built, and we are going to see it. But the drawing in itself, I think it has value for architecture, you know, because it serves the spirit of architecture. And the spirit of architecture is actually poetical in its nature, it's my belief. And it's not only my belief. There are very important architects who thought the same way. Like, for example, Frank Lloyd Wright, he said, a great architect is a great poet. And I truly believe it is so. But a true poet doesn't mean necessarily that he writes or she writes poems with words, although he or she can do that. It's about writing in between quotation marks with construction materials through the medium of architecture. If you can be poetical, thus, it would be great. I hear a voice. Does someone want to say something? Okay, maybe not. But if someone wants to say something, it's fine. Let's just promote dialogue as much as possible. So look at this drawing by Emilio Ambasz. This drawing, I think, is very clearly formulated, but also poetically. And it expresses the essence of the project he wanted to create, and he did create it, and it was built. Sometimes these drawings, which appear to be not quite realistic, from another point of view, they are more relevant to architecture than the very descriptive and prescriptive ones. Because yes, here is the soul of architecture. Try to make beautiful drawings. I mean, not necessarily as an end in themselves, because there could be a danger where you are too concerned with the beauty of the drawing and you forget about the beauty of the building or the reality of the built work. Sometimes a great drawing doesn't generate a great building. And other times, a drawing which is not too truly great could be the basis of an excellent building. So the relationship between drawing and the built work is complex. But the great architects or great artists, like in the Renaissance, where you had Bernini, he was an artist, he was a sculptor, he was an architect. Well, the beauty of the drawing was matched by the beauty of the built work, and vice versa. Not all architects draw well, but most of them they do. But there are exceptions, like Walter Gropius. Apparently, Walter Gropius, the founder of the Bauhaus, couldn't draw, and he always worked with someone else who did the drawings. So another look at a drawing by Emilio Ambasz, and we are going to see this house built, because it is a house, believe it or not. Okay, a bank, 2009, in Mestre in Venice, Italy, Banca degli Occhi. I don't know how poetical you can be building a bank, because the bank is the, you know, it's the building destined for money. He tried to do something here, and he did, you know, within the limits of what a bank is. I like this fact that it is, for example, if you see this image, you have no idea it is a bank. I mean, it could be anything, even a temple of some sort. But it is a bank. But on the other side, things are different, and we are going to see the other side as well. He works with very pure geometries, with pure lines. And yes, he did anticipate the arrival of the green over the gray, meaning the arrival of the plants on the walls, on the terraces, on the whole building. He did have this intuition that nature is to be given more place in our buildings, even in a bank. I'm a little bit surprised about the very large white space here around the bank. You know, we are in Europe, we are around Venice. You know, it's how come? You know, if it was in the you know, in the middle of the United States, I would have understood. Strange. Maybe it's not there. No, it is there. Private estate, Montana, USA. This is a look at this project, because it is a project here. You know, it's fantastic in a way. No, I mean, you have the animals, the horses, you have that wall which is a facade. Most of the building is underground. So when you envision a house, you have difficulties to imagine it this way. But he did various proposals for this house. I'm still not sure. I guess he built it in the end like this. I saw other you know, alternatives for this house. For example, what we see here is different from what we see here. In this house, we see a combination between the primitive and the luxuriously aristocratic. So it was an influence coming from postmodernism, but Emilio Ambasz still remained a man of a certain aesthetic, where you have large surfaces of glass, as you see in the courtyard there, a glimpse, but also in the elevation, very large surfaces of glass. And then you have these supports, which are probably superfluous structurally. They are not needed, but he likes diagonals, so he employed the diagonals in this way. Otherwise, the house is rather mundane. I consider him actually an architect who, and maybe his success is partly because of this, that he there is a certain level of the mundane in his work. This image, you know, can provoke some you know, puzzlement, because it almost looks like a palace, but then you are confronted with elements of rurality. So the interior is mundane. The exterior has some elements of rurality, but then also has a, you know, these parts here, you know, they mimic some kind of a gold. And at night, if one saw just this image, would have thought this is a palace. But a palace which is, supported at least at the level of imagining by these trunks of trees, which are, expressions of rurality. Again, this is the project. I'm a little bit confused because there are various houses, actually. It's not just one. I guess he explored the possibility to build other houses kind of in the same way, maybe around the one that you already built. Cordoba house, we already saw renderings a bit or drawings. This is in Spain. This house is itself some kind of a mystery house, because, for example, if you look here, you wonder, this is a model or is a built house? I still don't know for sure. It looks like a model, but it's actually the built house. One thing is for sure, architecture is also, and maybe even primarily, I know some people would attack me for what I'm going to say, but I think it's about expression, or it's also about expression. But what else do we see here? It's clearly, he took a poetical license in order to build this house. I mean, the functionalist would say, why did he need this tall wall like this? And what is behind it? Well, you see, he has two stairs that go all the way up to that, balcony, and it's like an observation place. That's its only function. And there are two stairs. Again, the functionalist would ask, well, wasn't one stair enough? Well, from a certain point of view, of course it would have been. But architecture is not just about logic and reason and calculation. This is the house. You like it, you take it. You don't like it, goodbye. Look at the stairs. They are themselves, very lyrical, maybe too lyrical and maybe too dangerous. But the house is interesting. Most of it is underground, and what is above ground are these two walls, which don't have an explicit function at all. Maybe to support those two stairs, which lead to that observation little room. Let's call it this way. But I imagine walking upwards towards that, doorway. It could be quite an experience. I mean, I don't know if I am now inspired enough to evoke to you what my feelings are about this. Architecture is not just about, if we can bring the piano in the room, or if I don't know, the refrigerator is positioned beautifully, or if the parking lot is sublimely done. No, architecture is also about emotions, about feelings, about intuitions, about longings. Going up on that stair and even going down, and contemplating the landscape. Okay, you could say it's an expensive procedure, or it's an expensive act. Well, if someone was willing to pay for it, why not? I mean, I should dwell more on this project, but I don't feel very very inspired today. So please forgive me if I'm unable to stir up your imagination or your intelligence as I would like. I am honest with you. I don't know if I could improvise in a sufficiently convincing way, but I will try my best. I will continue. So Lucile Halsell Conservatory, San Antonio, Texas. Again, Emilio Ambasz. Let's read a little bit about it. So the Lucile Halsell Conservatory is a complex of greenhouses located in the hot, dry climate of southern Texas. Unlike northern climates, where traditionally glazed greenhouses maximize sunlight, the climate of San Antonio requires that plants be shielded from the sun. Emilio Ambasz's design uses the earth as a container and protector of the plants, controlling light and heat levels by limiting glazed areas to the roof. This innovative design concept significantly decreased the need for expensive mechanical systems, thereby reducing the overall cost of the building by over 20%. This is the building. Well, you know, glass pyramids, hello IMP, hello Louvre. Maybe these are even better than what IMP did there because they are shards of glass buildings and they are asymmetrical. And I think this is the quality. But I'm not so sure that, I mean, it's known that plants like natural light, but from what we read here, apparently this building was supposed to protect, to shield from the sun because of the hot climate of San Antonio in Texas. I don't know, I'm a little bit confused, but I do know that Emilio Ambasz likes glass, and it's obvious here. Fortunately, in this case, it's for plants, but unfortunately, as we read, being that the climate is very hot in San Antonio, the plants needed to be protected from the sunlight. But how do you protect them with so much glass? It's a little bit confusing for me. This is the model of the building, and we already know this by him, that he likes to build underground with small areas where, you know, there is a connection between the building and what is outside. So there is some kind of a longing for Arcadia here, you know, some kind of a paradisiacal setting in which man and nature, nature and man cohabit harmoniously. But I don't know, I'm a little bit skeptical about this, you know, large glass surfaces. In essence, it's still about trapping plants. That's what it is. I'm a little bit suspicious of the human being who wants to protect everything, the animals by placing them in a zoo, and the plants by placing them in a greenhouse. Well, let's think that maybe if God wanted to protect the animals by placing them in a zoo, would have created zoos. And if he wanted to protect plants in greenhouses, he would have done so. But apparently he didn't. So you wonder why. I'm not sure the plants need our so-called protection, nor am I sure that the animals need our protection either. I think it's more a control of the human beings. They like to control everything, plant and animal alike. We need to be in control. Well, okay, let's control, you know, viruses, let's control cancer, let's control the mice. Sometimes they could be bothering, but let's not control every plant and every animal, because it could become problematic in the absence of a better word right now. I mean, I look at the nature in the foreground and I look at the building behind. I personally prefer the nature in the foreground with its incredible wild force, vivacity. The building, okay, yeah, it could be in front of the Louvre or it could be somewhere else. It happens that it's here. I'm still not convinced that that glass is truly protecting the plants from the hot sunlight of Sant Antonio. But again, what I think Emilio Ambasz does well here is that he employs these fragments of prisms, shards in glass, and you know, this creates an architecture variation that is probably better than you know, self-contained, monolithical, and maybe even symmetrical you know, container of plants. Prefectural International Hall. Now, this is built in Japan, and let's read a little bit about it. Maybe it will inspire you. The city of Fukuoka, Japan, desperately needed a new government office building, yet the only available site was a 2 hectares public park in the center of town. When news emerged that this potential new structure would be located upon the last remaining green area in the city, the citizens of Fukuoka erupted in protest. And I would suggest you, the students, also protest when something you think is wrong. Please do not be indifferent and do not be silent. Protest. Protest for something that you think is worthy. Fight for your convictions and for what you believe in. Ambasz won this commission by successfully achieving a reconciliation between these two opposing desires, maintaining the original size of the park while providing the city of Fukuoka with a powerful symbolic structure at its center. His design utilizes a series of garden terraces, stepping up the facade of the building, thereby giving back to Fukuoka's citizens virtually all of the land that the building would subtract from the city. The result was immediate community approval and the complete avoidance of any construction delays due to community challenges. So you understood, it was a limited plot of land, and what it was occupied by a park. And because the building was to be placed there, he went to the park upwards on the building. How else? But I don't know. I still think this so-called diagonal park, this park on a sloping, you know, land or surface is not quite quite as nature intended it. You know, these plants grow from concrete, and as you can see in this picture, there is no man here. It's you know, apparently inviting now to go up and down, you know, surrounded by vegetation. But as you can see, at least in this picture, there is no one there. And I can tell you, because I live a few minutes away from some beautiful hills in not far from Berlad, I go to the hills every day and I have a great pleasure. But you know, a hill is a hill, and what Emilio Ambasz did is something else. It mimics a hill, but it's not really a hill. I mean, it's a hill made of concrete and steel and glass, and then covered with vegetation. So in my opinion, it's not the same park that existed here before the building was built. This is the model. In the model, it looks more dramatic somehow, and maybe it would have been more successful if we built it in this way. But like this, I don't know what to say. You know, it's the dialectics between nature and architecture are still somehow in the favor of architecture. And nature is contrived, is forced, you know, by the geometry of the building, you know. I mean, no hill ends so abruptly here, or, you know, only in exceptional situations, something like approximately so happens. In essence, this is a surface, a sloping, large surface of concrete. Yes, concrete, and concrete pollutes and pollutes badly, from which some bushes grow. But did we ask the bushes if they are happy? No, we didn't. So I don't know. Is this for the glory of nature, or is it still for the glory of man? He tried something, but I'm not sure is really convincing. I think these plants, bushes, whatever they are, they look down on the trees that are still growing from the earth and envy them. Yes, I believe that the grass that is forced to grow from concrete envies the grass and the trees and the bushes that grow from the earth. They don't have what they have at the bottom. And apropos of this, if you allow me a short story that I just remembered, I read in Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci once wrote that a little stone was on top of a hill, alone, and was very miserable because it was alone. It was beautiful on the top of the hill, but she was alone, or it was alone, and it looked down at the bottom of the hill and saw a road covered with stones talking to each other, or so the little stone, the solitary stone, thought. So the stone, the lonely stone, envied the stones in the road or on the road, and with great efforts was able to dislocate itself from the place it was in, and it fell at the bottom of the hill on the road, where there were countless other stones paving the road. And immediately after it arrived on the road, you know, all kinds of vehicles and human beings stepped on it. The noise was incredible. It couldn't engage in any dialogue with its sisters, with the other stones. And in despair almost, the little stone looked up to the hill and said to itself, what did I do? I was fine there, you know, I was closer to the sky. There was silence there was a fresh air. And now I'm here on the road, and people jump on me and step on me, and cars and all kinds of miseries come upon me. I can't even talk with the other stones because the noise is terrible. I like this story because in a way it's about, you know, the dilemmas of life, to be solitary or to be solidary. Ideally, we should be both. Anyway, sorry for this intermezzo, but I really think here that the plants, the trees that grow from the earth have a privilege which those, although at a higher level, you would say closer to light and closer to the sky, which those plants on the concrete terraces do not have. And this is the plan. It's a city hall, you know, a large building with all kinds of offices and so on. Maybe it's a hybrid building with some also shopping areas like you see here. I don't know. I guess he tried his best to, you know, but I think in a rather a little bit simplistic way. But I don't know what could have been done if that was the only site for the city hall and the park had to be preserved. What bothers me also is the monolithical attribute of the building. It's very, you know, centralized and self-contained, and this is not a temple, you know. It's not. It's a building made by men for men, and built with probably a lot of concrete and steel and glass, and I don't consider it particularly sensitive. But it's an idea, a concept, so-called concept that he was able to implement. The appearance here is that nature took over the building. In other words, that green is indeed over gray. But I think it's only apparently so. I mean, yes, this is the appearance. Indeed, the green is above the gray. But when I look at what is underneath the green, it's much more voluminous, and so what is underneath the veneer of green is actually you know, much bigger and much more forceful, and there is the reality of the building, what is underneath the sloping plane of the veneer of grass. Yeah, it depends where you look from. Where you see the trees, nature becomes more free and more engaging. But you see clearly in the section, it's man, its majesty, the human being that occupies the building, you know, over 95% of the building. And then you have this illusion, this concession to nature, that you allow nature to climb on your terraces. But it's not, it's still nature, in my opinion, is dominated by man. This is the feeling I have. And I think maybe it's time to change something about this, because the humans extended themselves too much. Yeah, when you see just this, you know, green and just, you know, suggestions of a stair, it's fine. But when you look here, the, you know, the heavy duty presence belongs to man and his institutions. It's still a monument to bureaucracy, actually. There is a detail, you know, we just talked about, you know, technical details. It's not very clear, the image, but again, these plants are forced to grow not from the earth, or maybe just from a veneer of earth, and that stands or sits on concrete or a metal structure or whatever made by man. Look at the parking underneath, 4 floors, 4 glorious floors. Mikal Cultural and Athletic Center. Let's read a little bit about it. A cultural and athletic center erected by a department store chain in the new town of Shinsanda. I don't know where this is. Benefits not only its employees, but also the growing local community. The difficult challenge of this project was to accommodate the immense massing requirements of the building's 450,000 square meters. Well, 45,000 square meters. Those were probably, I don't know what they were. While sympathetically acknowledging the serene open landscape beyond, Ambash was able to return to the new town of Shinsanda virtually all of the greenery that this enormous building footprint would normally have taken away. But again, the reality is the enormous building footprint. In other words, the enormous presence of man, His Majesty man, Anthropos. The Japan Housing Authority was very pleased with the overall benefit that such a design solution would bring to the community. And as an incentive and ultimate reward for this inventive solution, they reduced the cost of the land by almost 2/3, they say. I don't always believe what I read, particularly when it comes to so-called ecology or reducing the cost of land or whatever. It's still the dominance of man. Man dominates nature, and it only allows nature to, gives nature the illusion that it is free, but it is not actually. It is still controlled, very much so. I mean, look at the building. This is not a building that bows its head or takes its hat off in front of nature. No. And the interior is that of a palace in a postmodern way. Yes, the graphics could be, appealing, but again, a lot of glass, and we know what this means. A lot of glass means a lot of expenditures. The electricity bills are without doubt high, because such a building in the summer, you melt if you don't have air conditioning. And if you, I don't know how the winters are there, but if there are winters without air conditioning, again, you tremble to death. So that's the price we pay with so much glass. I think Andrea Kahn, an architect and theoretician from the United States, was right when she wrote about the demagogy of glass. We have to be careful with glass. It gives us the illusion that we embrace the world and the world embraces us through it, but it's only an illusion and the cost is high. Maybe Jean Nouvel was correct when he said absolute transparency is obscene. So too much glass could be seen in this way too, maybe. Emilio Ambasz, Japan again. But the interior is postmodern through and through, and its apparent playfulness is a little bit an indulgence, in my opinion. I wouldn't use the words of Bjarke Ingels, hedonistic sustainability. I would just stop after the word hedonistic or hedonism. There is some kind of a hedonist here, because Bjarke Ingels also likes to imagine that we can create with the same so-called exuberance and with the same expenditures without, irritating nature. In other words, he wants to embrace nature, but without giving up at all anything that the humans think they cannot live without. And I think maybe one of the next day I will try to make a presentation about so-called, using the words of Bjarke Ingels, hedonistic sustainability. Let's talk a little bit if you want. Thank you.